I'd like to call this meeting of the Fargo School Board into session. Before I can ask for approval of the agenda, we do have an HR addendum I need to add, and then I have a request for the board's consideration. I had a request this afternoon from Rebecca to add an item at the request of another board member to the agenda, but unfortunately our policy GP2E doesn't give me that latitude. It specifically says I should take it to governance. Governance should plug it in. I asked Rebecca if this was a matter that we needed to address sooner rather than later because governance doesn't meet for another month. And she thought it did have some sense of urgency. Under our GP rules, we do have the ability to suspend our normal operations by a 2/3 vote. Specifically, what they'd like to add to the agenda is a discussion of GP 12, which is the process for addressing board member violations if a member has willfully and continually violated the policies of the board. And one of the remedies for that is a discussion in a public meeting. So I would entertain a motion that we suspend our normal operating rules for agenda items to place GP 12 on the agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. I need a 2/3 majority, so if you'd call the roll, please, Anne Marie.
Boyd.
No.
Goldenberg.
I'm going to say no, too.
Knutson.
Yes.
Paulson.
Yes.
Rodenbiker.
Yes.
Ulrich.
Yes.
Ani.
Yes.
Benson.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes. Motion carries. So we'll add GP 12 as business item 6C. And with that, those two changes, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve with the additional items. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed signify by saying no. Motion carries.
President Johnson, can I ask, please, who seconded that? I didn't quite catch it. Thank you.
That brings us to our staff reports. We didn't have anybody signed up to address the board this evening. So we'll go over to Laura at the FEA table.
Good evening. What I'm sending around to you now, I'm handing out at the request of and the permission of the organizer, Chris Potter. FPS remembers Chris Potter when he was a Bruin SRO a few years ago. He is now, in addition to being a school resource deputy for Cass County, he's also the president of the state SRO Association, and they're putting on the school safety conference. And he's got so many titles. I just found, and I hadn't realized this was also a work group until a letter from Dr. Schatz last week, the CCUSR, which is not an acronym. Little known fact, you have to be able to pronounce it for it to be an acronym. So, well, maybe you can say that. Maybe during a break we'll try. The flyer is for your information and consideration. Absolutely, they want to have, top-level administrators and school board members involved in looking at school safety things. We always pay very close attention to safety in our schools. All of us do. We lose sleep about it. Lately, our attention has been heightened to the point that sometimes it approaches panic and fear. I want to say that from the very beginning of my service as Fargo EA president, Dr. Schatz has not only allowed but encouraged me to come to him with any concerns. He even lets me wax philosophical when I need to about what's going on. So I sent him a very early morning email one day last week, wondering could we work together to identify how do our educators work with students and possible walkouts and protests. And I don't want anybody really to lose sleep, but I have to tell you, I felt kind of affirmed that he replied right away. And P.S., he said, absolutely, yes, let's work together on that. So I just want to say, I'm really glad to be on the same team with Dr. Schatz and you guys.
Thank you, Laura. Gets us to our big staff report of the day, Information Technology Report, Bill Westrick.
Thank you very much for that kind opening. When Dr. Schatz gave me the opportunity to speak, I wanted to make sure that I started things off with a real bang. So here's a wall of text and EL9, asset protection. The superintendent shall not, you can read what the superintendent shall not. What we do, student data is stored primarily at the state of North Dakota. Servers maintained by the state of North Dakota. What I forgot to put on this slide is they do have a backup center besides their primary. All of the data is secured by user account and role. They have their own firewall. We do test restores so that we know that their backups actually work. At Fargo schools, we have our own servers in a locked room with an alarm, with security cameras. Our most sensitive information is stored on servers that students cannot access, physically or online. We back up our data nightly. We store that data at a different school, and we test our backups routinely. We have a test company that we use for our employee data, and we're constantly restoring to it to try different things out before we do it for real, so we know that our backups are good. Our employee portal is SharePoint, moving to SharePoint Online through Office 365. Student access to the portal is restricted. The data is backed up nightly. Our email system is now fully Microsoft Exchange Online. You guys went through that at the last meeting. Thank you for your patience in that, and is backed up now continuously, so there is a process for us to get email back through even Office 365. And our message archiving system automatically saves a copy of every sent and received email for 3 years. EL9, number 9. AP 3208, the record retention schedule, was fully updated in 2016, and the schedule itself has a table that shows pretty much any type of data that we store, what our retention policy is, and we follow that policy. And even though it was 2 years ago, a big shout out to Patty Cummings, because she really did a great job with part of the rewrite and really nailed down what the special ed data is, policies are, which is our most sensitive data. So now, the reason that you guys are really here, the IT update. I am not a fan of hyperbole. This is the most important update that you will receive this or any other year. I promise. So we're gonna play a little game by the numbers. You don't have to shout out an answer. You can just feel smug if you got it right. First one is 17,684. That is how many technology devices we maintain across all of our schools. In the high schools, we have take-home one-to-one. Middle schools, we have in-school one-to-one that stays in carts. We have 2-to-1 Chromebooks in grades 3 through 5. We have 5 to 6-to-1 iPads in grades 2 and 1. And we're rounding off our technology rollout in kindergarten this summer with the same 5 to 6 per student in kindergarten. And you can look at all of the other devices. There's an awful lot of them. So the next number, 22. We have 22 staff people, and if you look very carefully at this picture, half of them apparently think it's the 1800s, and they're not allowed to smile when we pose for a picture. Of these 22 people, there are 16 that are, in fact, day-to-day working with devices themselves and with staff. That averages out to about 1,000 to 1,100 devices per person. So every year we always do more. We try not to knee-jerk and add staff. We become more efficient. I really have the greatest staff ever, and that's why I'm wearing my Superman tie, because they bought it for me. Next number, this is just an example of how great everything is in terms of comfort with technology. This is 1947. We were planning this summer to replace middle school laptops. It was their time, the 3-year cycle was up. The new devices that we could get today, it's the same budget year, have some benefits that would impact those kids now. We talked with the principals, we talked with the librarians, we talked with the teaching staff, and everyone said, if you can get them now, let's change them now. So in the past week, we swapped out a ton of laptops. And I'm not going to say that it was our staff alone. It was a tremendous amount of collaboration with the staff in the middle schools. And what a credit to the teaching staff. No complaining, no worries. They are comfortable with technology. They are comfortable with change. It has been a really great transition. And now the final quiz number, this is not a locker combination, 702, 29, and 4. We are in the 4th year of our agreement with 702 Communications, where they supply through the I-29 wireless access modems. If you are a free and reduced parent in the high school, if you allow us to consider that status, we will send a modem home so that you have internet access during the school year. 702 sends the bill to Fargo schools, and it's at a discount. There's a federal program called E-rate that allows us to buy networking equipment at a discount. Our discount is 50%. It's a little bit of a shell game when you think about the entire budget, but it's easy for me to justify in my mind the benefit that we give to kids versus the E-rate money that we save by using that program. If we get to the point where we're sending devices home in the middle schools, we are fully prepared to send modems home for the free and reduced kids as well. This is one of the things I am most proud of. So now, I promised a year ago we'd eventually have a security update, and this one's for you, John. So first of all, the state of North Dakota, I asked them, tell me about your security policies. And I asked them a lot. And finally, I found someone in the state that would actually answer the question. They didn't want to talk about their security. They do an audit through the state auditor's office every other year. In between, they have people try and penetration test their servers to see if they have any holes that are not patched. When I asked them, forget about the real definition, tell me what you say SOC 2 is, there it is. Security, availability, processing, integrity, confidentiality, and privacy. So they go out of their way to make sure that our data is protected. In fact, they go so far that they noticed we had a hole in one of our servers, which required us to take our elementary grade book off the internet, and we're having teachers kind of do a workaround for the rest of the year and you do their grades in school for the next 2 semesters. But I'll spin this as positively as I can. We've got a system in place that identifies and mitigates threats when they're found. Next year, that system is going to be taken offline, and we'll have everybody on Power School doing the grades, even in the elementaries, and they'll have their home access again. Specifically for Fargo schools, last year, we brought in an outside firm to do a no-holds-barred assessment of where we're at. And what they came back with after lots of interviews and lots of looking at our network were a top 5 recommendations, and they come from SANS. These recommendations. One was the state of North Dakota has a firewall. Great. You do not have a firewall that separates your servers from your students. We now have a firewall. We're going to talk about that in a second. The second one was something that we knew. There were a number of teachers that really wanted admin rights on their own machine because it makes it easier for them to load a program when they need to, which is often at a conference or somewhere where there isn't a tech available. The answer back from the security assessment was, wow, what a big hole you have in your system. It's too easy to load viruses, spyware, malware when somebody has admin rights because they click a link, nothing's going to stop that from loading. So we have removed that access. I don't even have admin rights on my own machine anymore. I have a separate account that I use for that. Number 3, we're always working on. Improve the security awareness in our staff. We're going to talk about that in phishing in just a couple of slides specifically for this year. This one, we will never say we're done. We're always going to be working on security awareness. The next one, I don't know if you're aware of this. I know one of our board members is aware of this. We have a wireless network called FPS Instructional. It has a password. When she asked what the password was, I said, you could ask your child. And yeah, she knew what the password is. All the kids know what the FPS Instructional password is. So a password that everyone knows isn't a password. Over the summer, we will be changing our wireless network. We expect it to look something along the lines of staff, student, guest next year. Everything is going to be based on who you are and what you do. So it will be a much simpler network, but it will also be a much more secure network because we're going to ask who you are before you get any kind of access whatsoever. For the schools, they're going to love it because they don't have to go onto our portal and look for the guest password anymore. And then finally, sorry about that, stay on top of operating system patches. We tended to wait and do patches quarterly and pick like a long weekend to do them. We don't live in that world anymore. There are too many threats that are identified and become real attacks too quickly. We update our servers all of the time now. We still don't do it on Patch Tuesday because we want someone else to feel that pain, but we're doing it much more frequently than we were before. So onto our firewall. None of us in the IT department are data security, network security experts. We don't have that degree. We have hired High Point Networks to monitor our firewall. They send us a report every day. They help us with our configuration. There's someone on call that answers the phone whenever we have an issue that we need to address. In those daily reports, this is just one sample from one page of a 60-some page report that we get daily. Who's looking at our network from the outside? 2 weeks ago, I would have told you Russia and China. In the last week and a half, Turkey. By a long shot, Turkey is interested in Fargo Public Schools. We've got to be doing some great stuff out there to get the attention of Turkey, the entire country. So what is it that Turkey is looking for? Well, it's tiny, tiny text there, but those top two items are possible and probable port scans. All they're doing, they're probably not people, there are bots that they have programmed to search the internet, looking for things that respond, and then looking to see, okay, do you respond if I look at this, these ports, this thing, and then, okay, are you patched for all of the vulnerabilities associated with that port? What our firewall is doing now that it wasn't doing before, because it didn't exist, is it is blocking that traffic. And from a low-hanging fruit standpoint, we are no longer the low-hanging fruit to all of these individuals in Turkey, Russia, and China. Hopefully they're moving on to the next easier target than trying to spend a lot of time trying to figure out how much I make in payroll. And then finally, phishing. I spent a lot of time on this slide, very proud of it. Phishing is going to be a never-ending task for us. It used to be that it was really obvious when there was a phishing scam. The guy is telling you that your server folder is full, but he's a professor at the University of Michigan. Kind of a red flag. Our people are pretty smart on that now. They've gotten much smarter. They look to try and penetrate, get one person to fall for it, and then they use that person's email to try and send messages to the rest of the people in your organization because you're more likely to click on something if one of your own people sent it to you. When we get attacks, and they are daily, when they're small, we count on our staff being smart, discerning individuals that know phishing when they see it. When it is large, and especially when we hear that some people did click the link, we will email everybody and tell them, you have received this message, please delete it. If you did click the link, let us know right away. We get their passwords reset as quickly as possible. The great thing about phishing scams, they get so many replies. We have a small window of opportunity to get that password reset before they start exploiting us. And then, just to prove how smart they are now, there is spear phishing. Brittany received a spear phishing message this winter. She received an email from Dr. Schatz. It did not rise to the level of Dr. Schott's discourse. So she immediately suspected that it was fake, and a closer look at the email address showed that yes, it was not a Fargo Schools address. But when you think about it, somebody sent our HR director an email saying they were the superintendent. Had she responded, I have very little doubt that they would have asked for W-2 information as the very next step, because that's what they wanted. They wanted identity information. So this is the new thing that we need to start focusing on, is that don't be surprised if they know you're a teacher. Don't be surprised if they know you're a principal. Don't be surprised if they know you're a board member. It's still phishing, and you can always ask me if you have any questions. And with that, do you have any questions for me on any tech topic whatsoever?
Rebecca?
First of all, my girls go to Ben Franklin, and they were talking about the day that they were getting those new devices. They were looking forward to that. Second, in regard to the free and reduced families, do we have information in regard to, well, I'm sure we do have information in regard to how many qualify for that, or we provide that service for? Is it just automatically if they
Nope.
are?
We actually are not allowed to look at free and reduced status unless parents very specifically give us permission to look at it for any other purpose but lunch. So we can't automatically grant modem access. We're also finding that a lot of free and reduced families, one of the things that they have determined is vitally important to their daily lives is internet. So they're skimping on lots of other things, but they're making sure they have access because it's hard to do anything without it. So we currently have about 130 modems out. We're always looking for more. We tried also partnering with Midco. Their paperwork requirements basically made the parents do all of the paperwork that they filled in for free lunch all over again. And very quickly we determined these people have already done the work. Let's just give them the access. So we went back to just being primarily with 702 because the important thing is that the kids have the access and that the teachers, when they assign the homework, know that they've got it.
So then are we relying on individuals or families saying they need assistance?
Everybody,
help, they don't
when the
have
devices
access,
are
or-
handed out, we're also informing them that this program exists, and they're encouraged to take a sheet home that the parents can sign that says that they grant us the ability to look at this access.
Thank you very much.
Bill, we're moving closer to the point where every student is going to have some sort of device, right?
I don't know that I would say that necessarily in the elementaries.
High school and middle school.
High school and middle school, we are one-to-one.
Why are we still buying textbooks?
That would be a great curriculum question.
This goes back to my teaching days, and we were on I think a 5-year rotation. Huge, huge expense. And in 5 years, much of that information is so incredibly outdated that you're supplementing it, and the books are sitting there unused for probably half the semester. I never have understood why we are sending kids home with a laptop and their book isn't on there, and then Houghton Mifflin or whatever updates it continually.
As part of the curriculum review cycle, we certainly look for online resources that are free or lower cost. And in particular, there are groups like one is called CK12 that actually puts online free resources. So we have some of our review process that we've decided to go with that route. Others, there are just not the resources that are there yet. And even with an online resource, the publishing company is still looking for some compensation for their intellectual property. So either purchasing the subscription or purchasing the book, there is still a cost associated with that. But through the curriculum review cycle, we certainly try to find lower cost or free resources whenever possible.
But wouldn't purchasing a subscription still be cheaper than purchasing books?
It may vary from time to time, but most of the time we are finding it's a similar cost. But every time we go through the process, we learn something new. In fact, like I said, we are actually in science in one of the curricular areas. We don't have textbooks, and we're not paying for that fee. It has been all online resources. So we certainly are attempting to do that whenever possible.
Go ahead, John.
Thank you very much. Really impressed. I like what I'm seeing here. That replacing 2,000 laptops in 7 days is incredible. So kudos to you and your staff. And it sounds like you had a lot of help. And so I think that probably isn't getting enough recognition here either. IT departments can't do it on their own. And it's really, in this day and age, everybody's job to know how to use their technology and to stay on top of things and to be able to build those relationships and count on those when you need them throughout our district is impressive.
Yeah,
So
and I'd give a
that's great to
particular
hear.
shout out to our library staff who have to be curricular, have to be library, and have to be tech now.
Excellent. One other thing that I caught, I like that the state is getting a SOC 2 report. For those of you that don't know, it's very similar to a financial audit by a CPA firm. Those SOC reports are signed by a CPA. So it's quite a tribute to them for getting that, so that's good to see as well. And overall, just thank you very much for this. I think it's just so critically important that even though maybe some of this is over our heads, we should have this in front of us, and it is our responsibility as a board to understand that this is part of the risk of any organization in this day and age. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
Appreciate it.
I do have
Go
one
ahead.
thing to say.
Go ahead, Brandy.
I just want to thank all of your staff. You guys do such an excellent job at keeping everybody informed. People that go check online, it's just amazing what you guys do. And I just want to, echoing on everybody. You are such a great leader, and you're so nice. And so I think that it's really comforting to know that there is somebody that is protecting all of us in the IT department. So I just want to say thank you very much for everything that you and your staff have done.
I appreciate that, and for the record, the people that were laughing, come on. I'm a delight. Thank you.
Rebecca?
Is this IT report something that we will be receiving on a regular basis? Is this part of our regular schedule of business?
I believe this was a specific request, but it doesn't mean that it's going to disappear. We certainly could put it into a rotation.
Yep, last year we did a modified version of it where Joe Dell brought in some classroom examples.
John?
And as Bill was pointing out at the very beginning of this, it is in our GPs now for us to review. So have that opportunity. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Superman.
Thanks.
That brings us to our consent agenda, and the chair would entertain a motion.
I move we accept the consent agenda with the added HR addendum as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying yes. Yes. Any opposed signify by saying no. Motion carries. Brings us to our first business item, which is memo number 85. At our retreat, we looked at several different issues. One of them had to do with the increasing need for additional space for our early childhood special education programming, and also the potential need for space if we move forward with a Setting D program. At governance, we talked about the different topics and kind of tried to figure out a home for the next step for them. On this particular one, the administration would like direction from the board to basically have them continue to move forward, looking at the issues, opportunities, and come back with a proposal for the board's consideration for both the early special ed program, early childhood special ed program, and the Setting D program. So I would entertain a motion to that effect if somebody so desires.
I move that we direct administration to continue to research and develop a plan for the early childhood special education program and a Setting D program for the Fargo Public Schools, and bring the plan to the board for review and potential approval once developed.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? David?
I've been hearing from my colleagues in West Fargo, they're talking about similar things. Has there been discussion or will there be discussion about possibly a joint program?
I actually think we have been in discussion, not just with West Fargo, but actually with the SEEC. I'm not certain if that's in relationship to both these programs or just the setting D. Dr. Gross?
Thank you. We have had conversations with SEEK members about the setting D and also with West Fargo. We meet approximately monthly with those two groups as we talk about we all have similar needs across our districts and how can we either collectively come up with a solution or at least share information so that we can all benefit from the research that we're doing.
Seeing no other hands go up, Anne Marie, would you call the roll, please?
Goldenberg,
Yes.
Knutson,
Yes.
Paulson,
Yes.
Rodenbiker,
Yes.
Ulrich,
Yes.
Ani,
Yes.
Benson,
Yes.
Boyd,
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes. Motion carries. Our next item of business is item 6B, the monitoring report for our BSR 5, or 1 through 5, I believe. And I'd reference you over to memo number 82 in your packet. First of all, I want to thank those of you that did provide feedback. And I noted at the end, I believe, Rebecca, you had some thoughts about possible discussion on some of this particular GP. Anything more you wanted to add there?
Let's see. I don't think I need to add more words. I just wanted to say that it has been, I think the timing of this is interesting because there's been such, again, I don't see any violations in what we were reviewing, the policy monitoring. But what I wanted to just make sure people understood is that when referring to GP 12 and when I read through GP 12, it started my thinking a little bit more in regard to that doesn't seem to be so clear in terms of a process that, you know, we might need to go through at some point. And I want to make sure that we have a conversation about GP 12 and then the other policies that are connected to GP 12. So then I would assume that would be referred back to governance possibly for a conversation and for where to go on that. But with our discussion, you know, the discussions that are happening nationally and all over the place regarding harassment and bullying and everything across the board that we all hear about in the media these days, I want to make sure that as an elected board that we have in place what we would need if we ever need to have those kinds of conversations. So that's where this is coming from.
We'll certainly put it on a governance agenda and kick it around there. Any other comments on this particular memo? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
I move we accept, what is this, BSR
1 through 5.
1 through 5 as written.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Please call the roll.
Knutson,
Yes.
Paulson,
Yes.
Rodenbiker,
Yes.
Ulrich,
Yes.
Ani,
Yes.
Benson,
Yes.
Boyd,
Yes.
Goldenberg,
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes. Motion carries. Brings us to item 6C, which is a discussion on GP 12, which is the process for addressing board member violations. Rebecca, I don't know if you're going to lead this or?
I can start.
Okay.
So this adds into what I just talked about for our last business item. But I have been asked to bring forward a conversation this evening from a fellow board member, and that's Jennifer. regarding some concerns that she would like to have addressed, and as Vice President, I'm bringing it forward to you. And I would like Jennifer to have a follow-up after I'm finished. This links up into GP 12, where there are currently we have three processes outlined in regard to potential board member violations. One is and then I'll explain a little bit more after this, obviously. One is a conversation in a private setting between the offending member and the board president or other individual member. B, which is number 2, is a discussion in a public meeting before the offending offender and the full board. That's where we're here now. C is public censure of the offending board member. Jennifer has asked that I bring forward B. So we have board members' code of conduct, and we have board member covenants that I'm referring to, and I'm referring to this based on her request. Just some points to bring up. We have a long list of board member covenants. We have 18 listed here. So I'm mentioning 4 of them. And talks about what board members will and will not do. The first one that I've been asked to mention is exercise honesty in all written and interpersonal communication or interpersonal interaction. Number 2, the second one on the list, is to demonstrate respect for the opinions of others. Number 10 is worded as criticize the positions and/or statements of others with which they disagree in a constructive rather than deconstructive manner and only after expressing such disagreement in a public board meeting. Number 16 is make every reasonable effort to protect the integrity and promote the positive image of the district and one another. Under members will not, there are 2 items. Number 1, embarrass each other or the district. And number 2, intentionally mislead or misinform each other. I have also been asked to mention on GP 9, Board Member Code of Conduct, 2B. So 2 says, board members may not attempt to exercise individual authority over the organization except as explicitly set forth in board policies. And 2B says, members' interaction with the public, press, or other entities must recognize the same limitation and the inability of any board member to speak for the board except to repeat explicitly stated board decisions. GP3E also talks about school board ethics. 14, we have 14 items. Number 4 says school board members should be able to work cooperatively with others. Number 7 says school board members should be aware that the authority of the school board is as a board. A board member should never make commitments outside of board meetings on behalf of the board. And I believe those are the items that I was asked to bring forward. I do have some handouts if anyone wants printouts of what I just read out, because I realized it was a lot of information. But at this point, I believe I've done what's been requested of me, which was to bring forward conversation. And I'd like to turn it over to Jennifer, if that's okay, Jim, or if you would like this
Jim,
to be conducted otherwise.
could we have what you said so that as
Yeah, why don't you pass those
as
around if
it's
you would?
referred to, we know what
Can someone grab me a copy of those, please?
Sure, I just don't know how to get them through the phone.
No, you're fine. I just want a copy of them. I can see you guys. But
Not a
I want
problem,
copy
Brandy,
of 'em.
we'll hold one for you.
I'll send
you.
her one in the mail.
Jennifer?
Okay, so clearly I thought it was important for you all to hear some examples of why I feel like GP12 needs to be addressed at this time and in a timely fashion. So I'm going to give you some examples from some of the things that happened at last 2 weeks ago meeting, both during the meeting and after.
We might as well take a short break, and we'll reconvene here at, 6:15 or so. We'll call this meeting back into session. We're on item, I believe it's 6C. Back to you, Jennifer.
My apologies. It might take me a bit to get through this, but please bear with me because I think it's important that we talk about, even though it's very, very difficult, clearly. First, I want to start by saying that I know how much courage it takes for folks to come here to our boardroom and stand up in front of us and to speak. And I really feel like, unfortunately, at our last board meeting, the president used his position to make condescending comments to the audience, to citizens, in a dismissive fashion by replying to parents' requests for transparency by saying things like, quote, "The concept of transparency is kind of interesting to me," end quote. As he went on to say, "Just for the record, the maps that you're all referring to, it's not the first time we've looked at maps. We look at them every year," end quote. I've heard from parents how that made them feel to be here and how they felt discouraged and how they felt their voices weren't even still as they stood here, that there was no willingness for the board to listen and for them to participate. I've never heard our president address an issue like that and to take the opportunity to downplay what the issues that we are talking about. Comments that were intended to make them feel like they were overreacting. And I do think that we owe them a public apology. Second, as to some of the items that Rebecca read from GP 10, number 1, exercise honesty in all communication. There has been emails that we have received from constituents pointing out that there has been some inconsistencies in terms of what the message has been via email communication and radio communication, as to saying things like 3 to 7 years versus our own messaging being 2 to 5 and decisions within the next year. This has led to confusion, and again, their belief that it lends itself that we really don't want people to be involved. Number 2, demonstrate respect for others, for opinions of others. And I'm really not sure who he was calling a chicken little in his email reply to a constituent, but it certainly wasn't demonstrating respect. Number 10, criticize the positions and or statements of others with which they disagree in a constructive rather than a destructive manner. All of you witnessed the condescending comment that he made in an attempt to stop me from talking at the last board meeting. Lastly, and perhaps the most serious of them all, it's the hardest one for me to repeat. After the meeting, Jim cornered me. He used profanity. A word I can't repeat. It starts with an F, and you can fill in the blanks. He started by saying, "Don't you ever," the bad word I can't say, "blindside me again." I feel like this is the board's responsibility to take this leadership opportunity to change the path here, okay? This has been an extremely difficult and stressful time. Clearly, I feel like I have been bullied and now threatened. I don't think that any board member should be tolerant of this behavior ever, not even once. It can't happen. It can't be ignored. and it can't be given another opportunity to happen again. And that's why I asked to follow the guidelines of GP2E. I'm making a motion that we ask the board to have a vote to consider removing Jim from the position of board president. That's all I have.
Thank you, Jennifer. Before I entertain your motion, I am going to take a moment to ask some clarifying questions and maybe share some comments from my perspective. I would agree it takes a lot of courage to speak at a board meeting, whether you're a board member or a member of the public. I would encourage you and any other board member to go back and listen to the meeting. They're all recorded, and I really do not believe I spoke in a condescending manner to anybody. But if that's how people perceived it, that is certainly their right. But I'm pretty sure I'd say the same thing again today. In terms of honesty in all communications, I think I've been as honest as I can be in all communications, and all of them have been shared with you throughout this process, I do believe. And I do think our data said that 3 to 7 years is when we're going to have hotspots. And I do think this decision will be in front of us next year. It could come sooner, it could come later, but that's my best guesstimate based upon the processes that we go through. I'm not certain what you felt you received from criticism from me that was destructive. I do know that you publicly stated in this board meeting 2 weeks ago that you felt that I was not your boss, nor the administration was your boss. I'm not certain, I can't speak for the administration, but I don't know where I ever gave you the impression I thought I was your boss. In fact, I think you spoke quite derogatorily about me in your written comment. As far as being condescending and trying to stop you, I didn't try to stop you. I asked you to stop reading and speak to us, communicate with us. And apparently you were done at that point in time. As to what happened at the end of our meeting, I guess you shared your take on what happened there. I think you and I both know the dialogue went both directions. And I would love for you to tell me when and how I bullied you. Pardon?
Using the F word, text messaging me and saying things that you know that you said, that's bullying, Jim. This is a threat. What you said to me after was a threat.
No, I said please, and I may have used profanity, never blindside me again. I didn't actually call you a liar to your face, although I felt like it, because I think you publicly lied in this meeting in reference to me. So yes, I was a little upset at the end of the meeting. Perhaps you want to go back and read what you actually spoke into the microphone in relationship to whether or not you were criticizing me or being derogatory to me. And I guess that's all a matter of perception. As far as the one communication that I think you just referenced, I happen to have copies of it here for everybody on the board to see, and I'll pass it out. Pardon? Well, I haven't asked for the second on the motion yet. Yeah. Yeah. As you well know, following our retreat, something occurred out in South Fargo. Some information began to be shared with a number of parents who began to then reach back into the district. And of course, by Monday morning, the district's email had been getting several messages from citizens out in the Woodhaven neighborhood. And I believe, actually, is it the West Point neighborhood? I may have that name, Point West neighborhood. I received several phone calls. I went to work Monday morning only to be met with the media at my front door. And this was the text message I sent to you at the end of my Monday. And yeah, I was pretty upset. Again, if you think this is being bullied, feel free to feel that way. But I don't think I said anything in this derogatory to you. I asked you to do the right thing for the board and the district, given the opportunity, and the right thing, and I believe you did it that night, was to share that there was no imminent decision being made, which is what I think I put into this particular message, if I'm not mistaken. So we do have a motion in front of us. It requires a second.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Further discussion. David?
This is kind of interesting. This happened right out of the blue yesterday. I had a dental appointment, and I was sitting, and the hygienist had both of her hands in my mouth, and I was saying absolutely nothing. And she said, she happened to be one of the parents that was at the board meeting. She has has 2 children in Woodhaven. And her comment was, "Is your president always so rude to the public?" And whether, you know, that, I guess the important thing is that was her perception. And she also made a comment about how he attacked the blonde board member. And I said absolutely nothing because I didn't think it was appropriate for me to make any responses, but something is happening where there is that perception. And I know perceptions are very, very hard to deal with, but this occurred to me personally just yesterday.
I have something to say
Linda.
as well.
Hold on, Brandy. Linda?
Okay.
I just wanted to clarify my vote earlier, which was not meant in any way to be any sort of commentary on what's before us. My vote was simply, I wasn't at the meeting 2 weeks ago. So this coming forward, to me, voting to put aside our regular procedures, that this felt like something out of the blue, that I think public agendas are important, so the public knows what we'll be talking about. But I just wanted up front at this point for everyone to know that this was in no way any sort of commentary on the topic itself.
Brandy?
I was also approached, actually right after our meeting. I got several texts from parents as well, basically asking me the same question. And I guess that's a huge deal. And I will tell you one thing. When I've got parents that are coming to me and other citizens that are not even in our district from West Fargo, as a matter of fact, because I have lots of people that watch it on TV because I'm a board member. And same thing is, you don't allow bullying in the school, but you allow your president to be bullied towards another board member. They were absolutely disgusted. So I don't think it's necessarily a perception of what people believe, and that may be what everybody thinks or whatever. It's everybody's opinion. I get that. But when you're hearing it a lot and you're hearing other comments about just the different stuff that has been happening, that's very concerning, very concerning. And I really, really don't think that is a perception of what we need to be out in the public. These people voted us in. We need to back them and listen to what their ideas are. We can't shove them aside and make them look like they don't know anything. Absolutely. With David's comments, he's right. He's absolutely right. People are seeing that, and we are part of who they elected. We have got to work together and not against each other. It's a proven fact. That's what I have to say.
Rebecca?
Well, I attended of course, we were all at the last board meeting, and I'll just reiterate some of the, I guess, the comments that were shared. I did not, I felt like there could have been another way to communicate some things. That's, I guess, what I would say in terms of how the audience members were addressed. And I didn't have any problems with the procedure that Jennifer was sharing, the information that, or what she decided she needed to speak about at the last meeting during the board report. And I have been contacted by one school teacher that observed the meeting, not here, but saw, the video of the meeting, and shared some of the same concerns. And to that individual, it's not his perception, it's his experience, his true feelings in terms of not feeling respected as a teacher. Shared some things with me in regard to processes of negotiations, condescending comments. That's what I have to share at the time.
Linda?
I just am asking a point of clarification. So the three of what we're actually doing tonight, so the three options available to us, which elude me right now, here we go, that we are, that you requested that we do be a discussion between the member and the board, which we are doing. But there is a second action on the floor, if I understand that. So we're actually doing two things. There
We
was
have a motion right now under GP2.
So what is, could you tell me what the motion is on the floor? I think that's what I am not clear about.
The motion is on the floor is to have a vote to consider removing Jim from the position of board president. I would reference you over to GP2E to the fifth paragraph down onto P2E, which the first sentence would give you guidance for this process. Then the paragraph right under number 2 on the first page.
Dinah?
So I'm struggling with all of this on various levels, and one of the reasons, or that I also voted against this initially, was I would have liked to see this come to I didn't know where it was going, but because I didn't know where it was going, I would have liked to see it come to governance first. Not, again, because I didn't know where it was going. Regarding the people that spoke at the meeting, from the audience, having started there myself many moons ago in a presentation to the board, I know how difficult that is. I also know that often, as many of us have experienced, the people that do have concerns don't always have all the right information and are making comments that are incorrect. And I think it is the role of the chair to correct any blatant misinformation. And I think that those of us who've, to be honest, I found some of what was said, the criticism of the board, and that we had, basically purposely hidden things from the public to be untrue and unfounded, and I felt it was appropriate to clarify the board's position on that for people, and I don't think it was done in an offensive way. So, And I don't think there's anybody on this board who has any, or in the administration, who has any intention as we move forward with any of those issues to exclude public input and so on. But I feel like we were accused of doing something that we didn't do. And so I can understand Jim getting his back up and maybe, but I thought that was more or less handled appropriately. So that's one issue we're talking about. Jennifer and every other board member has every right to speak as they did, and I agree that perhaps Jim cut her off inappropriately and so on. I can't speak to what happened outside of the board meeting. I agree that, known Jim a long time, maybe we all say things sometimes that don't come out the way we meant them to come out. And I feel that the way these GPs are written, the first step is to raise the issue for the first time with someone and give them an opportunity to certainly to respond, but also to improve and correct their behavior. I don't think that opportunity has been given here. And even though I agree that, there is behavior that needs potential change, I think we have to do the right thing by giving that person an opportunity to do that before we take drastic changes. I guess that's sort of where I'm at right now.
John?
I think this is an emotional issue that does need serious consideration. And so I would move to table this until our next regular board meeting.
It's been moved to table. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Did you second? I do not think this is a discussionable item. Am I correct?
No debate on it, and majority to pass.
Call the roll, please.
Jim, I think you should clarify what we're voting on here, because I think
We have a motion to table this topic until our next regular meeting. It was seconded. It's not debatable, and it requires a majority vote. Sure.
How does that affect the motion that was on the floor? Does that cancel the motion that was previously made?
No, it would be tabled until the next meeting, and then we'd pick this discussion back up.
So you're voting to table it to the next meeting, not voting on the motion at hand at this time? That motion
Yep.
is
Yep.
paused for the moment. Your motion that you're voting on right now is to table your motion, table this discussion until your next meeting.
Call the roll, please.
Paulson?
No.
Rodenbiker?
Yes.
Ulrich?
Yes.
Ani?
No.
Benson?
No.
Boyd?
No.
Goldenberg?
yes.
Knutson?
No.
Johnson?
No. Motion fails. Further discussion? Go ahead, Rebecca.
So I brought this up at the request of Jennifer. I want to make sure, in my intent in doing so also is to help us have a conversation so that we are a healthy board and that we all feel comfortable in sharing information in professional ways, and that we treat each other with respect, and that as we go forward, we'll have an election in June. We have some new people that are going to be coming on to the district level. And I don't want anyone to feel like existing board members or any new board members that might be coming on to feel as if this is not a safe place to share information. As elected officials, we have the ability to share information, and this boardroom especially needs to be a very comfortable place to do the work that we are elected to do. So that is my, ultimately, I just want to make sure that we work towards that.
Linda?
I'd like to offer my agreement to Rebecca. That I absolutely agree. And I want to thank Jennifer for her courage in bringing this forward, because it is so difficult. It's difficult to criticize a colleague publicly. It's difficult to bring these things forward. But we do have the health of this board and the district to consider, particularly at this moment when we are in transition. We're hiring another superintendent. We want to present our best face to our community and to the candidates. And so having an air clearing, as uncomfortable and excruciating as it is valuable. So thank you. It's difficult. As someone personally who has said way more than one person's share of stupid things in my life, I would like to hope that everything that has been said tonight by everyone has been taken to heart. I do not believe I will be supporting the motion, but I support the courage it took to bring it forward.
Christie?
Clarification. It states any officer of the board may be. Sorry. Any officer of the board may be removed for cause. So the removal would be of the position of president, but you would remain on the board, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Rebecca?
Anne Marie, as our board secretary and parliamentarian, could you further explain that the paragraph that you referenced us to under GP2E? As I read it, it seems like there are, it's possibly a 2-point item, and I have question on it, and if I have question on it, maybe others do as well. So I want to make sure that, because there's a motion on the table right now and we're having this conversation, I want to make sure that people, including myself, understand what I'm voting on.
Certainly, per GP2E, if you read that first sentence of that paragraph I noted earlier, the way I read that is that per Jennifer's motion, you would need to have the topic brought to the board and approved by a majority vote to have that discussion, to have then that motion to remove a member, an officer of the board from that position. If that would be approved by a majority vote to have that motion come forward, then the actual removal would need to be a 2/3 majority vote to have that occur.
Well, in keeping with that, the majority of the board did vote to put this on our agenda at the start of our meeting, and I see no other hands going up. So at this point in time, we have a motion before us to remove our president, And I'd ask.
I'd like to clarify, it'd be, it is a vote to consider. So first, there would have to be a majority approval to have the conversation to remove. So we would need a majority vote for, then there would be, need to be another motion to have that removal take place, and then that would need to be a 2/3 vote. If I may for just a moment, go for one step further. Per Robert's rules, the next step, if in fact we get that far, your GPs, your bylaws, if we use that wording, does not have a process to replace a vacancy such as this. In the event, per Robert's rules, that a vacancy would exist of a presidency, the vice president would then become the president for the remainder of the term.
Thank you, Anne Marie. So do we need a separate motion to decide to take this up for consideration, or do we have that motion on the floor already?
The motion on the floor is to vote, to have a vote to consider removing Jim. So at this time, there would need to be a majority to then go to the next step.
Okay. Call the roll, please.
Rodenbacher,
Yes.
Ulrich,
Yes.
Ani,
Yes.
Benson,
Yes.
Boyd,
No.
Goldenberg,
No.
Knutson. Yes. Paulson,
Yes.
Johnson.
No. Motion carries, which means we now could entertain a motion to remove the current president. Jennifer?
I make the motion to remove the current president from the position of board president.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Ulrich,
Yes.
Ani,
Yes.
Benson,
Yes.
Boyd,
No.
Goldenberg,
No.
Knutson,
Yes.
Paulson,
Yes.
Rodenbacher,
Yes.
Johnson.
No. Motion. Rebecca, will you take the chair, please?
Okay. So, with finishing item C, under business, we're done with our business for the evening, and we are moving on to board reports, and the first report is superintendent search update. Is that from Anne Marie?
Yep. Want to bring to you an update from Ray and Associates on the status of our superintendent search. They have reported to me that we completed our application period last Thursday. We received a total of 30 applications for the position. The candidates hail from the states of Alabama, Missouri, Michigan, New York, Virginia, Minnesota, North Dakota, Colorado, Maryland, Pennsylvania, New Mexico, Indiana, Illinois, California, Utah, and Florida. As I've shared with you in the past, the current positions of those candidates are primarily superintendents and assistant superintendents. So that is their report to us. They are currently working on reviewing backgrounds of the candidates. They are currently reaching out to them to do on phone interviews. They're working on the videos that you know that they will present to you on March 10th. Those will be about 3 to 4 minutes long, those videos that they put together on each candidate. Have discussed with them the timeline for March 10th, that Saturday when you guys are going to get together to review those. We're looking at a start time of 8 o'clock that morning unless I hear otherwise from Ray and Associates that some sort of travel plans would not allow that to be able to happen. At this time, Gary Ray does plan to come in on Friday beforehand, so that shouldn't be a problem to start at 8 o'clock, but I would inform you if something else changes with that, so please plan to start at 8 o'clock that day. They say it typically takes about 4 hours to get through that portion. I did look back to the 2012 search when we narrowed the candidates down in that search. And that time we started at 9 o'clock and ended at 1:23 p.m. So, typically plan for, maybe a solid half day, a little bit more for that time with Ray and Associates on the 10th. And of course, I'll just remind you that that is a time that will be an executive session with them. So that candidate review portion is a confidential time. Have been working to get the interview groups together for the interviews that you guys have scheduled through that week of March 19th. Have solidified the administrative group. Membership on that one is solid. Working to reach out to the community group right now. Have that one at about 5 right now. I'm still working to do reach out and then working on the other ones as well. So working to get those lists together, and once those are together, definitely we'll get those to you. Brittany and I are working on the interview questions for those other groups as well. So we're definitely taking the next steps and getting the things ready for that superintendent search process. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Thank you. Does anyone have questions? John?
I'm sorry, did you say 30 candidates?
30 applications, yep, 30 completed applications for the position. Mhm.
Anyone else have questions? I have one question from the admin group. How many members do we have on that?
Let me pull that up real quick. 9. 9 administrators. I will be the cabinet lead of that group to organize them and make sure they're staying on time of that nature. So 10 would be in the room with the candidate.
Okay, thank you. No other questions then? All right, that'll be an interesting process. Right, let's move on to committee and liaison and correspondence reports. Dinah, I'll start with you, please.
We had a communications committee meeting this morning, and we have a recommendation to bring forward regarding the future of the communications committee meeting. I was going to ask whether the chair prefers us to bring that to governance or for discussion first, or whether you'd like us to bring forward a formal memo for a future board meeting, which could be, one of the in March, or as Anne Marie mentioned, the review of GP7 to which this is relevant would be scheduled currently for June 12th. So however you'd like us to proceed, I will do that.
Okay, I think if we could bring that to governance, that would be great, and we'll have that conversation there. Thank you.
Also, there was a Board of Health meeting since our last meeting, and one of the many things that is going on that's new is a new syringe exchange program, and we were all handed some information about that, so I brought these for your information. I have been the chair of the Fargo Cass Public Health Board for a long time, and I am officially no longer the chair. We decided that it was appropriate to have a little bit of time for the next person to transition while I'm still on the board, since I'll no longer be on the school board, I'll no longer be on the Fargo Cass Public Health Board, so that's one job down. And I also attended the Chamber Economic Outlook Luncheon since our last meeting. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Dinah. David?
I will be completing my liaison visits next week, and can't think of anything else.
Christy?
I had a foundation board meeting, and one of the exciting news pieces is for Giving Hearts Day, they raised over $92,000 this year for children with critical needs in the Got No Milk program. They're very happy with that. It will help tremendously. And then I also was in attendance with the Communications Committee meeting, and I will be finishing up board liaisons as well.
Brandy, are you still on the phone?
I am still on the phone.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Well, I missed a meeting at noon today, so I don't have any reports on that, but I do have March 16th down for my Kennedy and my Discovery meetings with my liaison schools. I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you, and hope you feel better soon. John, please.
I met last night with the Fargo Education Association Negotiation Chair, Jennifer Mastrud, to build our agenda for the meeting on the 20th of March. It was a good discussion. The current agenda reads as approve the agenda, approve minutes, approve the ground rules that were settled last time. We'll exchange our proposals and have possibly a work session. She acknowledged they're aware that we have interviews going on that week, and so that meeting on the 20th might be a little bit shorter than typical. The meeting after that, though, will be the 5th of April. Please have that on your calendars at 4:30, beginning here, and no scheduled end time. So these upcoming negotiations, we're trying to give ourselves as much time as we need to work things out. They will be facilitating the next meeting, the meeting on the 20th, and so she had some ideas about a different arrangement of the room, perhaps, to try something different and maybe get some fresh ideas going. So looking forward to seeing what they have planned for that. That's my report. Thank you.
All right, thank you, John. Jennifer?
So GAC is looking for a date. Thank you for all of those that replied with what works for you. And Jolynn and I played phone tag today, so I don't have an exact date for you yet. However, I will get you an email tomorrow with what that's going to be. Okay?
Thank you, Jennifer. Jim?
SEEK met since we last met, talked about some new policies, pretty much just trying to flesh out their HR manual. But we are entering into a kind of a new territory. We signed a contract with Mapleton to provide business manager services to Mapleton. Their business manager resigned, left. So we're exploring whether or not that is going to be a valuable service that we could offer, in particular to smaller districts, as we kind of get our feet wet with Mapleton to see how that works out. Governance committee met, primarily talking about who needs to work on which of the retreat topics, as we referenced earlier today. And it was shared that the March 22nd governance meeting is scheduled for 7:30 in the morning, but that's potentially an interview date as well. So that governance date may be getting shifted. And Anne Marie, as always, provided a nice list of all the dates we have to remember. I think that's it.
Thank you, Jim. Linda?
Thank you. Community Development meeting, committee did meet last week at City Hall, and much of the meeting was talking about the annual HUD and CDBG work plan and some of the allocation of the funds that we have done for the coming year, but spent quite a bit of time also noting that there have been big changes in the planning department at the City of Fargo. Jim Gilmore has shifted duties, is no longer director of the planning department, so that is now Nicole Crutchfield. I think Jim is doing some kind of long-range planning kinds of things for the city. And with Dan Molly and, his name escapes me, the guy who's now the new Moorhead Business Association president, we've kind of lost 3 people in the planning department, so they're reorganizing duties, and there's some openings as well. And that is all I have to report.
Thank you, Linda. Are there any extras, copies there? Could you do me a favor and pass them back this way, please? Or I guess I need a copy. I gave them all away. My main report would be that the Native American Commission meets later this week. And so after we have that meeting, I will report out as to what happens there. And you've all received this president's report, again, graciously prepared by Anne Marie. So take note of the dates that are listed there and the expectations that are there for us. And homework due, the first set of homework coming up is due March 22nd.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
John, you mentioned that there was a meeting on April 5th. Was that for, you said with Jen Massard, correct?
The meeting on the 5th will be a negotiations meeting between the board and the FEA.
Okay. Because that's our, I suppose a lot of you guys aren't leaving until Friday for the
Correct, that's right.
convention.
Yes, that is right before
Okay.
NSBA. Yep.
Thank you.
All right, unless anyone has anything else, I just want to mention too, our next date for our meeting, our regular board meeting is March 13th. And does anyone else have anything to share? Okay. All right, then we're adjourned, and according to the clock back there, it's 7:04. Thank you.